Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm Brian Frosh, the Maryland Attorney General, and this is our forum on consumer protection. It's Consumer Protection Week, and we will be joined soon by our U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen. He's got a series of votes on the Senate floor this morning, so we're not sure exactly what time he's going to be here, but we're looking forward to his participation. And we also have with us, and I think you can see on the screen, Kim Camerata and Karen Strawn. Both of them are Assistant Attorneys General in our Consumer Protection Division. And they each have specialties, and we'll be hearing from them a bit later on as we start to get questions. Kim is an expert on healthcare and its intersection with consumer rights. And Karen is an expert on everything else that relates to issues that consumers intersect with on a regular basis. So we're very pleased to have folks join us today, and we're going to emphasize consumer protection in the COVID era because there are lots of different scams and traps that befall and await consumers these days that haven't been as much of a challenge when we're in a normal environment. But I think it's very important for everybody to understand that there are people out there whose full-time job it is to steal your money. They are working 8, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week, just to steal your money. And I want to let you know what we do as the Office of the Attorney General to help. I want to let you know what you're up against, and I want you to know what you can do about it. First, our Consumer Protection Division fights for consumers in a number of different ways. We have a mediation unit, and Karen and Kim both participate in that, oversee portions of that. We get about 40,000 calls per year. We recover for the folks who call us $10 to $15 million per year. We also, when we find an egregious problem, we'll file a suit. And I'll give you an example of that. It doesn't relate to COVID-19. This is pre-COVID-19. But we got a call from a young mom. And she had hired a moving company, Best Offer Movers, to move her from her apartment to a new apartment. They came, they gave her an estimate, as they're required to do under Maryland law, and the estimate was $350. And she thought that sounded like a good deal. Now, she had one child, a young daughter, who was disabled. She needed medical devices in order to help her walk. She needed hearing devices, cochlear ear devices to help her hear. And so Best Offer Movers showed up on the appointed day, and they loaded all the family's goods up onto the truck and drove to the new location. They got to the new location, they said, okay, that'll be $1,250. And the mom said, wait a minute. You said $350. I don't have $1,250. They said, okay, you call us when you get the $1,250. And they drove off. And they had the kids' medical devices. They had their beds. They had their kitchenware. They had all of their furniture. And so the mom and her daughter slept on the floor for a couple of nights. And then they called our office. And we can't file suit on behalf of all of the 40,000 people who call us every year. But on this one, the head of our consumer division came up to my office. His face was beet red. And he said, listen, this is an outrage. I want to go to court today and get these people some help. So we went to court. We got an injunction against best offer movers, required them to come back, deliver the goods for the original $350. And after they did that, we thought, maybe this isn't just a one-off event. We decided we would subpoena their books and records. And we found that they had done the same thing to more than 400 other customers of theirs. And we were able to get them socked with a fine that exceeded $500,000. But the point is that there's one call that led our office to intervene in one case that turned into cases for hundreds of other people. And so the calls that we get to our office not only enable us to help people individually, but also to get justice for lots of other folks. We file suit against not only folks like the moving company, but against Wall Street banks, against payday lenders, against nursing homes that are not doing right by their patients. We have gone against drug companies that are fixing prices. We have several large lawsuits pending with other attorneys general across the country to stop what we allege to be massive price-fixing conspiracies. So let me tell you what you're up against. As I say, there are folks out there whose job it is to steal your money, and here are some rules of thumb. One, you did not win the lottery in Ireland. I guarantee that. You have to buy a ticket, for one thing. Second, that nice man from Nigeria is not going to deposit $1 million in your bank account. 3, the IRS is not coming to arrest you. They don't come and arrest people if their taxes are overdue, late, or unpaid. They will contact you first. They'll send you mail. We used to say that if you get a call from the IRS, you can just hang up because they don't call people on the phone. A couple of years ago, however, they did hire private debt collecting contractors to call people on the phone. But our advice on that is the same as it is for all the other unsolicited robocalls that you receive on a regular basis. Hang up. Actually, it's better if you don't pick up in the first place. If the IRS is really calling you, they're going to leave a message. And unfortunately, some of the scammers leave messages as well. But our advice is don't call back the number that the supposed IRS person leaves for you. Go to the IRS website, look up a number there and call that, or send them an email. But if you get a call from somebody you don't know, don't pick it up. If you do pick it up, just hang up. Don't worry about being polite. They are very good at keeping you on the phone, at keeping you talking, at getting you to yes. They'll keep going and going and going. And sooner or later, they want you to say yes. They may have recorded the conversation and use that yes as evidence that somehow you've given them permission to do something with your credit card, with your bank account. So just hang up. If you find yourself in a conversation, you don't need to be polite. Just hang up. I can tell you that there have been billions of breaches of personal identity over the past just several years. Billions of them. The odds that your personal information has been stolen or breached by someone are very, very high. And I can tell you, my identity has been stolen. Somebody filed a tax return in my name a few years ago. They were hoping to get a tax refund. And the good news and the bad news was that I wasn't entitled to a tax refund. I owed the IRS money. So I don't think these identity thieves were successful. But if the Attorney General's personal identification information can be stolen, yours can too. And I can tell you it's happened to me this year again. Somebody filed for unemployment insurance in my name. The state, however, was smart enough to know that I'm an employee of the state, and therefore it was highly unlikely that I needed unemployment insurance benefits. But your personal information is most likely in the hands of somebody who doesn't want to help you, somebody who wants to do ill by you. So among the things that you can do to protect yourself, besides not taking their calls, and besides not opening their emails, if you get an email from somebody who's promising you that you've won a lottery, that you've got some benefit coming, unless it's somebody you regularly do business with and you recognize their email address. Look, when it says it's coming from Home Depot, look up in at the actual email address, because the odds are it's not coming from Home Depot, and it will say something different in the actual email that you're supposed to respond to than that it's from Home Depot or whatever other vendor. Don't click on links from those emails. Don't open attachments from those emails. It is almost certainly an effort by those folks to do you harm. They will put malware on your computer. That malware may allow them to take over your computer. It may just allow them to sit there and collect personal information like your bank account and your passwords. So please don't click on those links. Sometimes when you do, they'll say, okay, look, can we take over your computer to fix, or this is another scam, to fix your computer. You've got malware in your computer. We're going to fix it. Just let us click this link, let us into your computer, and we'll fix it. Then they try to shake you down for a payment of $350 or $500 or $700. So don't click those links. Don't open those attachments. Another thing that you can do is freeze your credit. You're entitled under Maryland law to freeze or unfreeze your credit in as much as you want. So you can call the credit reporting agencies and say, I want to freeze my credit. Unless you need a loan that week, unless you need a new credit card that week, you can freeze your credit. Nobody can open a credit account in your name. And when you're ready to get a new credit card, or you need to get a refinance a loan on your house, you can unfreeze your credit again. All of the major credit reporting agencies will do that for you, and nobody will be able to open credit in your name. It takes roughly 10 minutes to accomplish that. So you can call them up, you can do it online. It's very quick to do, and I strongly urge you to do that. You can also freeze the credit of your minor children, and that's important as well. The odds are that your 8-year-old doesn't need an American Express card, and yet your 8-year-old will still be a target of identity thieves. So, and the reason for that is they can use an 8-year-old's credit for at least 10 years, figuring that nobody is going to be able to know that your son or your daughter is nobody's going to check to see whether they have open credit in their name. I mean, you and your family are unlikely to do that, and so they can use it for 10 years without fear of being caught. And it will, when your child reaches the age of majority, ruin his or her credit. Now, let me just talk for a couple of minutes about particular scams that we've seen that relate to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen situations where nursing homes, assisted living facilities are reported to be requiring residents to sign over their stimulus checks to the nursing home or assisted living facility. If that happens to you, you can report it to our office, or that happens to one of your loved ones.
Mr.
Kim
Frosh,
yes.
just wanted to let you know that Senator Van Hollen has joined us.
That's terrific. So, Chris, welcome. We're really glad to have you here. And folks who are watching this, I'm going to interrupt myself because Chris, Senator Van Hollen, has got to go back to the floor of the Senate. I'm not sure what the schedule is, but I know you got to go back and vote on some extremely important matters. So I want to turn things over to Senator Van Hollen, but first I want to say that we are extraordinarily lucky to have him as our United States Senator. He is a champion of democracy. He is a fighter for consumer protection and the rights of individuals to vote, to be free of discrimination, and to be free of fraud and abuse. We couldn't ask for a more energetic or intelligent United States Senator, despite the fact that he is still in his first term. He is a person of great influence in the U.S. Senate. He's also, among the things that I mentioned a moment ago, an expert on foreign affairs, and is respected by senators on both sides of the aisle. So with that, Senator Van Hollen, take it away.
Well, Brian, thank you for those very generous words. Most of all, thank you and your team in the Maryland Attorney General's office for everything you're doing to protect Marylanders, protect Maryland voters' rights, and for the purposes of this discussion, all you're doing to protect people against consumer fraud and different schemes and scammers that are out there. And before the pandemic hit, the Attorney General and I went all over the state of Maryland, to every part of our state, and held a series of town halls on the questions of consumer protections, warning individuals, especially senior citizens who are so often the targets of these scams, but really warning all Marylanders about different scams that were out there, so that they could better arm and prepare themselves to detect scammers and not being trapped by them. And I want to thank our Attorney General for all that work he did before the pandemic, and now everything he and his office are doing during this pandemic, because as I'm sure you're discussing on this call, we've seen an explosion of other kinds of scams related to COVID-19. In many cases, a variation on a theme. Scammers look for the latest opportunities, and we have, of course, Americans in their homes more than ever, and the robocalls and those scams are on the increase, and many of them are related to scams around COVID-19, including very dangerous scams relating to purchasing therapeutic or treatments for COVID-19, and also fear now about scams related to the vaccine. So it's really important that everybody be on full alert. The Attorney General said, thank you for letting me go here. We're in the middle of what I think will be a series of 100 votes in the United States Senate. I left here last night a little after 2:30 a.m. And I expect that we will go late into the early morning hours tomorrow. But we are determined to get this American Rescue Plan passed and back over to the House, where I think unless changes are made during this series of votes, which is possible, it will be in a position to quickly go on to the White House and be signed into law by President Biden. And so we're very hopeful that that will happen. And there's an enormous amount of important relief here. I did want to highlight one of the provisions here regarding consumer protection that's in this bill at the federal level, which is that we provided $50 million for the Consumer Product Safety Commission to enhance targeting, surveillance, and scanning of consumer products, particularly COVID-19 products entering the United States at ports of entry, including ports of entry for small shipments, where they try and scammers try and sneak in counterfeit, pretend, vaccines or treatments. It will also enhance monitoring of the internet websites for scammers. And we all know that everybody is now more and more online, as we are now during this pandemic. And so many of these scams are online scams. And so this additional funds in the bill that we hope to pass later tonight will provide more funds for the Consumer Product Safety Commission to address those. Also, just to better inform consumers, as our Attorney General is doing, about the risks that are out there, so they'll be less likely to fall prey to them. It also includes over $30 million for the Federal Trade Commission to combat those who are engaged in unfair and deceptive trade practices, which of course is what these predators try to do online. And so we want more dollars to be able to go after them for their deceptive practices. So those are just some of the provisions in this bill that directly relate to protecting consumers, as our Attorney General is doing in the state of Maryland with the resources available to him and his team. There are many other provisions in here that will help the state and local governments at this time, in addition to the relief that will go to individuals who are out of work through no fault of their own, and very importantly, an increase in the child tax credit, which will, if extended permanently, would cut child poverty in half in the United States. This bill takes it through the end of the year. But those are some of the provisions. I also should say that we have extended, as you know, the federal eviction moratorium. As the Attorney General knows better than anybody, that's not a perfect solution here. And I know he's continued to fight efforts to subvert the intent of those protections. We also are continuing on the forbearance against people being foreclosed upon in their homes, and also providing an additional round of rental assistance funds so people are not hit by a tsunami of rental payments due when the moratorium ends, and also funds for homeowners who are underwater because they've lost their job or income because of the pandemic. So those are some of the things we're trying to do to protect consumers in terms of renters or people who have otherwise been badly hurt by this pandemic in terms of their pocketbook, as we also provide funds for vaccine deployment and supply so that we can get everybody vaccinated. So, Mr. Attorney General, thank you and your team for your leadership, and thank you for the chance to say a few words. I'm happy to try and answer any questions at this time if that's appropriate.
Thank you very much, Chris. And there is one question in the chat that you can, I think, you're playing a role on and might have some information to impart. And that it's from I hope I'm pronouncing the first name correctly, Janique Love, who says, what's being done about all the calls that you get on a daily basis from all of the country? Did you want to talk about
that we get to our office?
robocalls? No, we're besieged by robocalls, and I think that's
absolutely. Well, this has been an ongoing issue, as you know. It's a little bit like the arms race. Every time federal and state governments take one step, the robocallers try to take the next. But we have passed a legislation. I've been proud to co-sponsor legislation to increase the penalties for those robocallers, so that we can crack down on them. Also, to provide consumers with the ability to better detect robocalls coming in, and working also with the telecom companies to develop algorithms to better detect what are robocalls and block them from coming in to begin with. So we're really trying to move forward on all those fronts. First, prevention, in the sense of trying to, be able to identify, detect robocalls and block them from coming, providing consumers with more equipment and information to themselves, screening them out, and then increase the penalties for people who are violating the robocall laws. And I welcome any other suggestions if folks on this call have for what we can do. As I say, it's always a moving target, because as we take steps to clamp down on robocalls, they try to find new ways around it. But we're determined to keep up, get on top of it, and reduce robocalls.
And let me just add to that our office is authorized to prosecute, go after the folks who are making these robocalls that are illegal and very often scams. But the difficulty is, what you see on your caller ID is not where the call is really originating, and often not who it's from. They have what they call spoof numbers. And it may look like it's from down the street, but in fact, it's not only out of state, most of the time, it's out of the United States. And so even if we're able to track down the person who is guilty of making these billions of robocalls, or some of these billions of robocalls that everyone's getting, we're unable to prosecute because they're outside of the US. So it's extremely important to not take the calls that you don't recognize, and to hang up if you realize that you're in a conversation with somebody who's not trying to do you right. So, Senator, there's another question for you, and it's from Kashena Cross, and she asks, how will the 80 million in protection provisions be allocated to cities in need? What are the request procedures for economic, unfair trade, pandemic relief? Here you have it. I'm guessing the 80 million may be more like 80 billion, but would you like to respond to that? Uh-oh. I think somebody may have frozen Senator Van Hollen. Looks like we've lost him. And Kashena, let me apologize, because I do not know the answer to that question. Let me go back for a minute or two to some of the other COVID-19 scams that we've seen. And hopefully we'll get Chris Van Hollen back in a minute. And if not, then I'll answer whatever questions folks may have. And besides the phony stimulus checks, some of the scams that we've seen include COVID prevention and treatment scams. There are still companies claiming that their dietary supplements, their homeopathic products or herbal products can prevent disease by boosting or strengthening your immune systems. The FDA has not approved these supplements. I would urge you not to try them. If you find yourself the victim of something like this, you can get in touch with the FDA, and their Maryland number is 410-779-5713. People are also selling fake vaccines, fake medicines, tests, cures. Just ignore that stuff. It's difficult enough to find the legitimate places where you can get a vaccine, get a test. Stick with that. Be very wary of people who are hawking that stuff over the internet.
Mr. Frosh,
Yes.
we have Chris Van Hollen back.
Great.
Sorry, Mr. G, I'm sorry. We got to improve on this end, our connectivity. I will say that in this next round of legislation that we hope to pass soon, there's additional funds for high-speed internet broadband connection and especially connecting kids to learning through the E-rate program. So sorry, I just want to let people know I didn't jump off. I just lost the connection, and I don't know if there was a question or not that still remains.
Yeah. So here's the question. It's from Kashena Cross, and it's now up on your screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
How will the Okay. I think she may mean 80 billion. I hope she means 80 billion.
So there were two things. The consumer protection provisions that I was talking about in this bill go to two federal agencies, the Consumer Product Safety Commission and the FTC. But I'm glad this question came up, because one of the main changes in this bill over the December bill is this bill does provide substantial resources to state and local governments. And when I say local governments, funds will go directly to every Maryland county and Baltimore City, and funds will go to every municipality in the state. And they're for fairly flexible purposes in terms of addressing the consequences of the pandemic, both in terms of the health care challenges, making sure we deal with the distribution in an equitable manner. And we've seen in Maryland, sadly, Maryland has had, in my view, a terrible rollout. That's according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control, numbers that have us in the back of the pack. But I'm mentioning these funds that will go directly to state, county, and city governments because they're very flexible and they are substantial. Just to give you an idea, Baltimore City will receive over $600 million unless there are additional changes tonight through amendments. Those funds can be used by the city to fight in very flexible manners, responding this pandemic, and should allow them to also support these efforts against consumer fraud. And similar other monies are also flowing by formulas to all the counties and towns in Maryland. So we have the federal allocation that I mentioned for the federal consumer protection agencies, but then additional funds to flow to Maryland entities that could be used for this purpose.
That's really terrific. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat at the moment, but is there anything else in the big package that you're talking about that will maybe you could talk about the provisions in the package that will help folks who are behind on their rent, folks who are on the threshold of eviction or perhaps foreclosure. I understand there is some significant funds available for that.
Right. No, thank you for asking that. And thank you, Brian, and your team. for everything you're doing to make sure that in the middle of this pandemic, people are not thrown out of their homes and put on the street and putting themselves in greater danger and putting the community at risk from greater spread. So we've done a couple things. One, we have extended, and President Biden did this through executive order as well, but we've codified some of these things, extending the federal eviction moratoriums. We've also extended the provisions regarding forbearance for homeowners who are having difficulty, paying their mortgage payments on time. Those are extended through the end of the summer. But then, very importantly, as you said, we don't want people to then be faced with a tsunami of rental payments that are due. And by the way, a lot of landlords are not big corporations. They're smaller operations. They also have to pay their bills. And so in the December bill, we provided $25 billion of federal funds to go to local governments, and the major jurisdictions in Maryland will get these funds directly, major meaning highest populations, but others will be allocated through the state for other jurisdictions with smaller populations. Those monies are designed to make sure that we help keep people in their homes, renters in their homes who are at risk of eviction. And importantly, this bill also contains a federal fund for people who are behind on their mortgages because they've lost their jobs or income because of COVID-19 and need emergency help to stay in their homes and prevent foreclosure at the end of the period when the forbearance period ends. So these are very important protections to try to, keep people from being thrown out of their homes. And we look forward to working with you and your team and all the local jurisdictions in the state to make sure they're put to good use.
Thank you. That's huge. There's one other, and this may be a shade off topic, but there's one other thing I wonder if you could address for us. I saw in this morning's paper that we're up to 2 million vaccinations a day in the United States. I know the Biden administration has made this its top priority and is moving aggressively forward to make sure that everybody in the country gets vaccinated. Do you have any sense of what's coming, and are there provisions in the stimulus package that will help accomplish that goal?
Yes, there are substantial resources in this package to help with both the increased production and manufacturing, as well as the distribution, including an important set of funds designed to make sure that the vaccine is distributed equitably, which it has not been based on all the facts in our state of Maryland. And President Biden just the other day began that process by distributing some of the federal vaccine directly to community health centers. These are the federally qualified health centers that are providing health care to people who are most in need and can best get the vaccine out into neighborhoods. But in addition, this bill will provide the resources to expand that production. As you probably heard, President Biden just announced the other day that because of actions they've taken, we now expect to have enough vaccine to vaccinate every American, get one shot at least into every American's arm by the end of May, moving that up a full 2 months from what had been the end of July. That's for a number of reasons. One, this administration has now been using the Defense Production Act, the DPA, to its full authority, which is something that the previous administration had not done. It allows the federal government to essentially instruct companies, businesses to help with this national emergency and pay them for it. And as a result, we both have more vaccine coming online. You also saw this administration purchase another 200 million doses. So if you take all of that together, Dr. Fauci indicated recently that we're going to go from a situation where we have demand outstripping supply to a situation where we have supply, and it's our job then to make sure that we get everybody vaccinated and that we get the vaccine into every neighborhood and every arm so that we can achieve herd immunity. But this bill does provide substantial resources for that. And also this bill provides resources to get our kids back in school quickly and safely. Because it's one thing just to order a school to do it, but you need to make sure that they have the tools and resources, and this will rush resources to schools so that they can move ahead rapidly, because we all want our kids back in the classroom, as soon as and as safely as possible.
Thank you. Now, we have several more questions in the chat. Do you have a few more minutes to stay with us, Senator?
Unless we have a vote. We're good. We're good. Thanks.
Okay, good. So one question is, can you be charged for COVID vaccine? And the answer is they're supposed to be free in Maryland. And I don't know whether Kim Camerata has anything to add to that, or Chris, whether you do.
They're supposed to be free. Anybody who's being charged with for a vaccine should let us know, because that's not supposed to happen. We obviously don't want anybody prevented from getting a vaccine because they can't afford it. That leaves them more vulnerable in the entire community. The whole idea here is to make sure everybody can get it and nobody is deterred because of cost. So it should be free to everybody.
Right. Kim, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was also just going to point out, again, where we're talking about scams. And so, I mean, we have certainly heard scams of folks being told that they can move themselves up on the list by paying a little money to get move up on the list. That shouldn't be happening. That's not a legitimate payment of funds. So that's one of the scams we are seeing as far as cost of the vaccine.
Okay. We also have a question from Kathleen Hughes. Is there a solution for tenants who are being evicted at the end of their lease terms for holding over beyond the end of the term, usually because they've been unable to pay during the pandemic? And so our office is trying to address the eviction issues in the state of Maryland, that being a very big one. The protection that exists during the state of emergency in Maryland for tenants under the governor's executive order does not protect tenants who are holding over, but the federal emergency order does. And as long as it's in effect, the eviction cases, in Karen, you may correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in Maryland, right now, eviction cases are on hold pending the end of the federal emergency order. And I'm not sure when that expires. Karen, do you know? Or
I believe the current date is June 1st, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
Okay. So, and just for the rest of the folks who are listening, there are a number of different reasons for which a landlord can evict a tenant. The most common one is failure to pay rent. And you don't pay the rent, the landlord can file an eviction notice and get you out. Another is your lease is up and the lease has not been renewed because the landlord chooses not to renew it, and the landlord can evict you in those circumstances as well. Our office put together an access to justice task force that addressed COVID-19 issues like these, the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of families who are behind in their rent and are facing eviction. And we have sponsored several measures in this session of the General Assembly to help tenants in eviction situations. One of them will raise the filing fees for evictions to raise money to provide legal services to people who are under threat of losing their homes, and when that threat arises under the circumstances that they've been left in the COVID-19 pandemic. But most immediately, as Senator Van Hollen mentioned a few minutes ago, there is rent relief coming in the stimulus package. And if we can make sure that he's back on the floor and casting his vote, we may be able to prevent hundreds of thousands of evictions or stave off hundreds of thousands of evictions in the state of Maryland because of the rent relief provisions that are in the rent assistance provisions that are in the stimulus package. Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
No, you said it just right. That is, we had that first installment, $25 billion nationally in the December bill. We're going to be providing another $25 billion in this bill for that specific purpose. In addition, the large amount of funds that will now go to both state and county and city governments are very flexible, and they can also use those funds to fashion their own supplemental rent relief programs if they want, or others. They're flexible to be used to help people who are hurting because of the pandemic. And so those funds will now be on top of the directed funds for this purpose and rental assistance. Brian, let me thank you and your team. I am going to have to jump off now, but again, unless we get an amendment that passes to somehow upset the apple cart here, which I don't suspect, but is always possible, we should be wrapping this up certainly by like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Tomorrow morning, I hope, and then it'll be on its way. But it's great to join with you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for the great work that you're doing on behalf of our state and the citizens here. We appreciate you, Senator Van Hollen.
Thanks so much. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Let me address a couple of the other questions. Well, I see one from Judy Marvin, who plays the piano. Not me. That's my wife. She's the talented one in the family. Let me see if there's anything else that I've missed in the chat. Preparedness, Kashana Cross, preparedness, mitigate compromise before a ransomware attack occurs against state, holding the state at ransom. Have the General Assembly drafted a position or stances not to fall victim. So this is a question of cybersecurity, and it's as tough on the state as it is on individuals. As I was saying earlier, you are probably receiving emails every day that would lead you to fall victim to somebody who either wants to put malware in your computer to hold you up for ransom or to discover your personal information. And there are tens of thousands of state employees, and any one of us can screw it up. Any one of us can open an email and click on a link, believing it to be legitimate, and find that some malware has been placed in the state system and works its way through to either incapacitate the state and hold it up for ransom, or to steal important information and perhaps money as well. So I have to tell you, I'm chairman of the State Cybersecurity Council. I don't think we're doing enough. There isn't enough that we can do. I mean, there's not. There's the metaphor is, we build a 10-foot fence, they build an 11-foot ladder. We are racing against hackers and bad scammers every single day to try to ensure that the state systems are protected. And they're racing to figure out new ways to break into whatever protections we've put in place. And it's a continuing battle. I think it's one that governments across the country have begun to recognize as an extremely important one, an existential one in some situations, but not enough investment is being made in the infrastructure to protect us. It's going to be expensive, but the costs of failing to make those investments will be much, much higher. Let me see what other questions we've received. Do we know how competitive things are for folks to get vaccinations? Has any thought been given just to drop the age bracketing method and give vaccinations via zip code? Look, in my view, what should happen is what's happening in our sister states, at least in many of them. And that is, there is a portal, and you go into the portal, you put in your name, your birth date, your vulnerabilities, you check whatever, you answer whatever questions there are for you, and the state then responds and says, okay, Frosh, you live in Montgomery County, go to this site on this date, May, tomorrow, whatever. I mean, I have friends in Arizona who were signed up for vaccinations early on, and it was because there was a central portal for it, and they knew where they were in the queue based on what they got in response from the state. They got appointments and they got a date. That's where Maryland should be. Our system is very haphazard. The state has said, we're going to let the counties do it. We're sending doses here, we're sending doses there. And unfortunately, it sets up a situation in which people sign up on a dozen different waiting lists and hear a rumor that, oh, there are going to be doses at this Walgreens on Thursday. And so it sets up a competitive system, which is not the way it ought to be. We want our system to be quick. We want it to be efficient. We want it to cover everybody. And I believe, based on what Senator Van Hollen says and what I've been hearing, that there will be doses for everybody. But right now there's a shortage, and they're not being distributed in the most efficient manner. I know our Department of Health says that if they had a single point where everybody could sign up, it could lead to a single point of failure. And I think that's not the attitude that we ought to have as a state. It's not the right approach. This can be done. It should be done. And I've made those views known, but we're still in the situation where we have a decentralized process. It's not as organized as it ought to be. Let's see. That, I think that may have addressed all the questions in the chat, unless I've missed one. We still have a couple more minutes. Let me just go back and identify for you at least a couple of additional scams and problems that we face in the COVID-19 era. And one of them is medical billing surprises. We have a problem in our state in general where a consumer can be surprised by a facility fee that they were unaware that they would be paying. There's legislation pending to address that. I hope that will pass and avoid future surprises about facilities. But the federal government is paying for the cost of the vaccine. The providers of the vaccine can bill health insurance plans for the cost of administering the vaccine. But as we've said before, patients should not be facing charges there. There are Medicare scams that are going on now. Fraudsters are calling people and offering a $200 Medicare prescription card when there are no such cards that currently exist. It's a ruse to get a consumer's Medicare number for fraudulent billing or for medical ID theft. Be aware of that. You can report it to us. And Kim, why don't you tell folks our consumer hotline, and then Kim, you can tell them our HEAU, our Health Education and Advocacy Units hotline. You can call either one. Karen?
Sure. Our consumer hotline is available right now from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the phone number is 410-528-8662. That's 410-528-8662. And we're taking calls during all that time, trying to do what we can to help people figure out who's got emergency situations and who can file a complaint, and teaching you how to file a complaint, all of that. So we're happy to help you. And
we have a separate hotline for health issues, but I'm not sure whether that'll be confusing. Kim, do you want to?
I'm happy to do it. Obviously, if you call any of our hotlines and it's the wrong hotline, we'll get you to the right one. So no worries. But the health unit, so if you have a question that's directly related to healthcare issues, medical billing, medical equipment, COVID related, you can call the health hotline, also open currently from 10 to 2 at 410-528-1840. And both of those hotlines are available for Spanish callers at 877-261-8807. And
why don't you repeat that one, Kim?
Certainly. It's 877-261-8807. And one other hotline, I think that's important while we're talking about scams, because so many scams are, ruses to get people's money or or to steal their identity. And so we have an identity theft unit in our office that really assists folks if their identity is stolen, or they provide that personal information and they're thinking perhaps there's something else I should be doing. People like you and I, Attorney General, who had our identity stolen and used for tax returns. Our identity theft unit can really help give some good guidance to you, and you can call that number at 410-576-6491.
So we are, I think, at the end of our time. I want to thank everybody for listening. You can go to our website for further information about any consumer issue. It's marylandattorneygeneral.gov. Maryland Attorney General, all spelled out, one word, .gov. You'll find volumes on consumer protection, lots of good advice, lots of stuff that can help you avoid being a victim of a fraud or a scam. So I want to thank Kim Camerata and Karen Strawn again for joining us. And my thanks, though he's no longer here, again to Senator Chris Van Hollen. It's been great being with all of you this morning, and I hope the rest of your day is a good one. Thanks very much.